This Filipino-American illustrator has worked with the best of the best in Hollywood. Among his most famous works, hit animated films like Inside Out and Up. The legend and Academy Award nominee, Ronnie del Carmen, joins us now in our studios in The Final Word. He's based in Oakland, California, but he joins us now here in Manila. Thank you so much for joining us, Ronnie.
Wow, thank you very much for having me.
Wow.
It's an honor to be here.
Academy Award nominee for Inside Out. How did it feel to be inside the theater?
Amazing. Of course, you only watch that on TV when you're growing up. And then to be there, that would be my second time to go to the Oscars, but it was my first time as an actual nominee. So that was amazing.
Wow. But what does it really take to become a filmmaker behind, world famous animated movies like Inside Out and Up, which was a big hit among many Filipinos?
Well, a lot of luck and a lot of work.
A lot of work.
A lot of work. But at the same time, I didn't plan to be in animation when I started out. And this all is just me following one little step of liking the world of making animated, content.
Yeah.
And then all the way to, working in animated features. So it does take a lot of work. We do a lot of trial and error. Everything is about failing and failing fast so that you can get to the right answer.
That's right. That's really important. You really have to fail to be able to succeed and succeed big.
Yes.
You had a very successful career here in the Philippines. You're a graduate of the University of Santo Tomas. You worked for an advertising agency. What made you move to the U.S.?
Well, my father had immigrated to the U.S., and for 11 years I didn't see him. And the immigration process between the U.S. and the Philippines, it takes a long time. And by the time those papers were up, I was kind of wondering if I should go at all. I was 29 years old. I had a family going already, so...
It was time.
It was definitely time, but at the same time, it's very uncertain. I'm about to start my life all over again.
At 30.
At 30, turning 30.
That was way back in 1989. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm revealing your age.
Yes, it's all right. It's all right. I like how old I am.
But you are, I would say, the only Filipino, pure Filipino, to be working with some of the biggest production outfits this world has ever known.
Wow.
In Burbank, you were with Dreamworks, you were with Warner Brothers, Pixar, and Netflix. How does one Filipino get to reach the pinnacle of success and work with some of these global studios?
I don't really know how that happens myself. I think that there's a lot of not only luck, but there's a lot of word of mouth, because a lot of the work that I do it's a small industry. People know who you are, and then people talk about what you do and what you did for the production, and then people tend to, want to be working with you.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate that way.
And how did you basically fall in love with animation and get your connection with Pixar, which led to these big animation hits, Inside Out and Up?
Well, working animation is one of the things I didn't want to do.
Okay.
I was graduating. All I wanted to do is to draw. Animation, in principle, it takes 24 frames to have 1 second of experience. And me being a lazy illustrator when I started out, I feel like, no, I don't want to draw 24 drawings for 1 second of experience. I want to draw one drawing and let that stand for a whole story. But what I understood about animation is that once I started getting into it, I happened into it, is that my story that the story that I helped to make happen shows up on screen, and it affects audiences.
Yeah.
It makes them feel, it makes them laugh, it makes them feel thrilled. That can be really addicting. And so when I started working on storyboarding for Batman, the animated series, it felt like you had the ability to actually tell these stories that will affect audiences. And then all the way to feature films. And when I worked on Finding Nemo and then Up and then Inside Out, most of the time I get these scenes that
Blockbuster hits.
I know I'm very lucky. Most of the time they give me these scenes and these sequences that are about the toughest moments in the character's story in the movie. It's usually about talking about some difficult thing that the character has to overcome. Right there at the bottom of the second act, it's an emotional scene. There's no train that's about to run away and crash. There's no one chasing you. The character is about to face something very difficult that they have to understand.
And one of the most emotional scenes and sequences that I have watched is this one of Carl and Ellie.
Yes.
Right? No words were said.
Yes.
But it just gave me the goosebumps. And the story is based on your father.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of us actually use our own selves as the basis to generate story.
Yeah.
And, Pete Docter, Bob Peterson, the director and co-director of the movie, actually put themselves in the movie. And me being the story supervisor, I put myself in the story. And my father, at that point, had a head full of white hair, square glasses and jowls. He looked a lot like Carl. So I empathized with that character a lot, and I brought a lot of my own feelings about my own father to Carl. And then the life of my father, from the time he was little to the time that he's grown old and unwell, I was in charge of doing that sequence, that moment. So I poured all of the things that I feel about my own father into that. Yeah. And then also what I knew about my father's story. It's the three of us, the director, the co-director, and myself. We shaped that story all together, but I was in charge of bringing it to the screen.
It was a very, very touching scene. I've watched it many, many times, and it continues to tug my heart. But of course, recently, you were a voice actor for this very famous film directed by Peter Son, Elemental.
Yes.
And you played the character of Bernie.
Yes.
What was it like?
It's very strange because I actually was just helping my friend out, Pete. I was just helping him out by doing the scratch voice for the reels. What we do in animated features is that we draw out all of the movie. We don't produce it yet. And then we lend our voices to it because it's cheap. We already are employed by the studio. We can just do the lines. Later on, real actors will be hired. So Pete asked me to do the voice for the reels, just for the scratch version. And then gradually, he started saying that, you sound really good as Bernie. And not only that, you kind of are Bernie.
Yeah.
You're a father, you have a daughter. And he's heard me talk about my family a lot because we're colleagues. And he's heard me talk about my daughter and my son all the time. So it's like, you know what? You are Bernie. And I'm thinking, Pete, you hire whoever you need to hire. You don't need to get me in this. So, but eventually they did.
I've watched this film a couple of times, and I will definitely watch it a third and a fourth time. Just watching the relationship between father and daughter.
Yes.
What are your upcoming projects? Now you are working with Netflix. You're no longer with Pixar. You're now with Netflix. What are your upcoming projects?
Well, what I'm doing, even across many studios, including Pixar and Netflix, is that I try to make my own story. And what I've been fascinated with is, the pre-colonial indigenous tribes and the stories that come from our past.
Right.
Our identity before is what I'm interested in. And also the mythology and the lore that comes from the stories that I grew up listening to when I was a kid. I think it's time for those stories to have a global showing, an animated feature, that's globally seen, on a world stage. I'm hoping that someday, hopefully it'll be one of my own stories that could actually be shown.
And we have 30 seconds before the end of this interview. What is your advice to aspiring writers, illustrators, voice actors who want to follow in the footsteps of Ronnie del Carmen?
Wow. There's one thing I know that I want to be able to impart to anyone who wants to do this. don't leave your own stories behind. It's very important that in the world we're in, you feel that you have to be just like everybody else in order to make it. That's not been true about my own career. What I've been doing in my career is that I actually contribute a lot of my own self into the things I work on. And that has made the difference. There's so many people who actually want to be alike. I think that your job is to be true to your own stories and be yourself. And I think that that will make a difference.
Great advice, Ronnie, and an honor to have you here on The Final
Well,
Word.
thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Ronnie del Carmen, illustrator, writer, voice actor, and Academy Award nominee.